I might be a little rusty. And just for everyone, I had many family members had to evacuate their homes over in Mill City area and Sublimity, but I just got word right before the meeting that my brother's house that they just bought within the last year survived the fire, and I think it's a miracle. I can't even believe it. I'm so happy. So I kind of got that in my head. It's been a stressful 24 to 48 hours, but anyone who has family over there, I've got my fingers crossed that they get through this. So, well, let's do roll call. Have you done roll call, Kat? I need to.
Yes. No, I'm fine.
Okay. All right. I think we're going to try something new. And Lynn, correct me if I miss anything, but I think we're able to try public comment live today. They just got some systems going, I believe, yesterday or the day before. And so I wanted to ask, I think Juan is helping here. Is there anyone here for public comment?
In just a moment, let me bring up the slides so that people can let us know.
And maybe while Juan is doing that, if it's okay, we have a new member among us.
Yes.
Cindy and I were kind of madly doing our check-in as she was trying to get to a location where she could actually have internet functionality. Cindy, are you okay with me introducing?
That'd be great. Yes. Yes.
So just wanted to welcome to the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, Heather Simmons, who is filling in. David Haynes is pursuing his bliss in Arizona. He learned that Arizona will forgive your student loans if you are a teacher in Arizona for a certain period of time. So his girlfriend really had a phenomenal opportunity to get down there. So they moved down there in the middle of all this heat and craziness. Very thankful for David's time on the committee and his energy and insight in the discussions that you all have had. And we got right to work, and the chamber nominated Heather, who is a phenomenal new member for us. Heather works at Pacific Source and also has been a member of the city's budget committee. So she has a really good grounding, I think, in city operations and sort of the players that some of us work with very regularly. So Heather, welcome. I don't want to put you on the spot, but you are welcome to say something if you'd like. Otherwise, feel free to wait until discussion happens, and just really are thrilled that you're here as well.
Great, thank you. And I appreciate being able to serve and just all the learning I'm sure that will take place. So I'll look to each of you as my mentor.
Yes, welcome aboard. I saw your face, and then I think you turned your video off. So thank you. Thank you so much and welcome. Yes. So Juan, is there okay, I see the slide.
And at this point, it's a great time for those of you joining us as attendees. If you'd like to provide public comment, yes, general public comment not related to the public hearing in the agenda, please raise your hand by following the instructions that you see on the screen, and we'll be happy to call on your names as we see your hands being raised. And let's give him a few seconds. Cindy, if you don't mind, just so they can find the participants icon. And
I don't see any
tiny hand, but I'm not seeing anybody at this point, so I think we're okay to move forward.
So Cindy, if I can jump
Yes.
back in, just with a quick public comment summary, we weren't sure yet if we were going to be doing live comment or not, and so we asked for written comment by noon today. Some of you have crazy lives and haven't had a chance to read the letter that came in from Lonnie Hunter, just discussing short-term rentals and asking for you all at some point to take a position on that. And so if you guys would like to have that as a future topic, that's fine. We can do that and get that scheduled and have a good discussion.
Does that sound good, everyone? Maybe we can review that and then set up a future time to review. Thumbs up. All right. Great. Well, we have a plethora of minutes to approve. March 9th, May 13th, May 27th, and June 10th. Remember, May 13th and May 27th, those were our marathon meetings where we actually got a lot done. But I've reviewed the minutes. If anyone has any questions, great, or someone can motion to approve the minutes.
Cindy, I have a question.
Yes, Kathy.
Okay, I was just wondering, first of all, Kathy, thank you so much. These are really complete minutes. I just was wondering if I had a question for follow-up from some of the minutes, sparked my memory. And I was wondering if I could just ask for an update at a future date on some of the items that were on the agenda. Is now an appropriate time to ask that? Lynn, can I ask
think
those?
so.
Yeah.
Okay. So on the very first minutes, they're dated March 11th on the heading, but it says March 9th on the motion. Anyway, on the second page, I had offered to be part of a focus group of developers, and I haven't gotten any communication on that. I'm assuming it just hasn't happened because of COVID and everything, but I just would love to still be a part of that. I'm just putting it out there. And then I had asked Russ about an ombudsman for CDD, and I was just wondering what the status was of that. And then also we had talked about the SDCs for the transportation, and I was wondering if there's been any movement on that. So those three things I was hoping we could get an update on at some point. And then there was on the last agenda, the one dated July 8th, I just had one quick look. Yes, if Lynn, if you could give us an update on what's happening with the warming shelter, maybe that's part of your report. So anyway, those are the only things I had. Otherwise, I can make a motion to approve the minutes unless somebody else has a comment.
Does anyone else have any comments? Those are good clarifying questions, Kathy. And I think some of those will be answered with the staff report at the end. I see Lynn nodding her head. Does anyone else have any comments or thoughts about the, I know it was a lot to cover and recover.
Kathy's speaking, but I don't hear her. She's muted, but I see her mouth moving.
Sorry, I said, I apologize. I will not get that far behind again.
No.
Okay, well then I'll go ahead and make a motion. I move to approve the March 9th, May 13th, May 27th, and June 10th minutes. Although I note that the March 9th is called March 11th on the minutes, so I don't know which is correct, but I move to approve those.
Seconded.
Any additional discussion? All right, let's do the WebEx. For all in favor, if you raise your hand, I will state your name out loud so we can put it for the record. I'll just go in the order of the screen. So Allison Hohengarten is an I. Heather Simmons, I. Ian Schmidt, I. Joanna Gardner, I. Kathy Austin,
Aye.
Matt Martino,
Aye.
Priscilla Buck. Hi, Priscilla. And Keith Wooden. I don't see your face, but if you could speak.
Aye.
And Cindy King is an aye. So I believe that is a unanimous aye. I didn't miss anyone, did I? I don't think so. Terrific. Thank you so much. So next on the agenda is the CAPER public hearing, and CAPER stands for Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report. And I think this is one of Rachel's most favorite things to do, right, Rachel? So I understand you're going to speak about this and give some information on that. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask when after Rachel shares her information with us.
Hey, Juan. All right, thank you. Yeah, I had to become the presenter.
Oops.
Oops, wrong one. There we go. Can you see this? Oh, nope, still the wrong one. Not want
Hey,
to.
Rachel, you can leave it on that one if you want. And where it says display settings, you can just switch the view.
Okay.
Up on top where it says display settings, you can swap the presenter and notes view if you click on display settings.
Guess it's not. Sorry.
Do you want me to try to pull it up?
No. I just can't get it off like one of my screens for some weird reason. There we go. Okay.
Oh, the fun of virtual meetings. Thanks, you guys, for hanging in there. It's like every time I think we have it figured out, there's some crazy new thing that pops up out of nowhere. So I appreciate everyone's patience.
There we go. You seeing the first slide of the consolidated annual performance evaluation report?
We see your like presenter mode. So at the top toolbar, you'll see it says show taskbar, display settings, and something. You want to click that display settings middle button.
Does not say that.
Okay, well, let's roll with it then.
So there we go. How's that?
Perfect.
There you go.
All right. Figured it out. Okay, so the caper is essentially adds up the persons and households served based on the goals that we set up in the 2019 to 2023 consolidated plan. And so the city of Bend expects approximately 3.5 million over the course of the 2019 to 2023 plan. And last year, Bend spent a greater portion of its CDBG funding on creating and preserving affordable rental housing and homeownership. Approximately $50,000 of CDBG funded 7 rental units or preserved 7 rental units for low and moderate income veteran households. Another 400,000 of CDBG funding acquired land that will be developed into 47 apartments for low and moderate income households. and the city directed $330,000 of CDBG home ownership financial assistance for 8 low and moderate income households. Nearly $300,000 of CDBG funds acquired land that will be developed for 4 homes in the future for low and moderate income households. So these percentages just kind of demonstrates the spending that was done over just the course of the last year, but it's for a 5-year plan. So as we spend more, we'll get closer to that, 100% kind of marker that I have there. This slide represents the annual number of persons served within the goals for the 5 years to complete. So as you can see, a lot of the public service dollars that we spent stretched pretty far and served 100% of our consolidated plan goals for the 5 years. So although a smaller amount of CDBG funding was used to support public services and assist homeless with services, there were 3,550 persons served. And we, again, exceeded those 5-year target goals. Service funding is easier to administer and assists many more people, but it doesn't have as great an impact as a housing unit or a shelter bed. The rental and home ownership benefits of land acquisitions will not be seen until 2022. Additional housing fund awards will allow Bend to exceed rental housing development targets for the consolidated plan, with 50 rental units expected in the upcoming year and over 300 rental units expected in 2022. One thing to notice is that we didn't have any applicants for the development of shelters that would increase beds for the homeless or funding that would develop housing for the homeless. And similarly, there were no applicants that requested funding for infrastructure improvements. And so to accomplish the breadth of our 2019-2023 consolidated plan, it may be necessary to encourage applicants to fund more development of homeless shelters, housing for homeless persons, and infrastructure improvements. Any questions?
So this is Heather. How much of the sort of lack of traction with the homeless shelter sort of fell victim to what happened with the legislature? And I know we had quite a bit of collaborative work and really a lot of support for the warming shelter here, and then the additional concept of the wraparound services. Did that play a role with sort of what we're seeing in the 2019 performance there?
It did not, because the funding determinations and the applications were practically a year before those recent conversations occurred. And so what our homeless programs are starting to understand a little bit more is that you really have to plan like a year ahead to get access to this CDBG funding for those things. Now they're pretty much up to speed, and they applied for our recent extra CARES allocation funding, in addition to some NSP dollars that became available. So we have funds to fund those warming shelters this winter, and they're kind of already lined up for those programs. However, we just need to find a place. And the CDBG funding would just fund the services at this point. That's what they applied for. So it's really just finding that location. It's key. Any other questions?
I have a question. Those 300 units, the rental units that are coming on in 2022, are those units that the permits are in, and then the permits are going to be filed or finalized then, or are these rental units just being applied for now?
Those are rental units just being applied for now. So, or that we recently, Stillwater Crossing development, in addition to Canal Commons 2.
Great.
And I believe there's some building permits that have been established, and maybe Keith can speak to, Forbes, and Connors. Those have already.
I lost your answer faded at the end. Those, can you just repeat the last sentence?
So those are underway. The Forbes development, like across the fire station. So those are
Rachel, we're having a hard
units
time
that
hearing
Housing
you.
Works is developing.
Rachel,
Yeah.
can you lean towards your mic when you're talking? It's real. You've been fading away every time you've been looking elsewhere.
Sorry. I feel like I'm close to the mic, but I'm actually far away. So the Forbes development that Housing Works is developing, that has been permitted and underway. And then the Connors 1 has also been permitted and is underway. And I don't know if Keith can speak more to where those developments are at the moment.
Sure, if you want a 2-second update, if you guys can hear me. We're pouring foundations, getting footings in, and making a big mess. And so we'll start making it look better here pretty soon, but we're going full steam. Things are going really well. So we thought we had a little scare of a lava tube issue on the Connors 1 site, but it turned out to be nothing. So very good. So very positive stuff to report.
And Keith, are they still on track to kind of be leased up at the beginning of 2022?
Probably even slightly sooner, I hope. So we should be done April, May-ish for the Forbes site by Lava Lanes, and then probably start of September for the Connors site, Connors 1. So yeah, I would highly doubt that it would take more than 30 to 60 days to lease up every single unit, and that would be slow by our standards. So before 2022.
Just drove by the Connors site today. It's looking great, Keith. This is Barb Campbell, by the way.
Cool. Not
Yeah,
too messy. Not too messy, huh? Yeah, it's good.
Oh,
It's kind of level.
I could. Some of those forums are even above the level of ground, so it's progress.
Yep.
Visible progress. Yeah.
It's good to see.
Great. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Could I ask a question, Cindy? So are these number of units now, have we hit the 400 number that the Parks Department was waiving fees on, or are we getting really close? And are you going to give us an update in your staff report on that?
I am, but I'm happy to move it up a little if you'd like that. Yes, we have, I believe, 24 units left under the Parks cap. You guys are rocking and rolling. We thought that 400 units would get us through 4 years, which would end at the end of 2022. And here we are. It's 2020 and we are near the end. So that is really good news, I think, for the community. In the meantime, City Council unanimously voted to forward a letter asking for that cap to be lifted to the Parks Board. I'm not sure yet if that has been delivered to Parks yet. I'm assuming that it will take them a little bit of time to discuss and determine how they want to respond. But that's where we are in progress. So the city, as you guys know, we do not have a limit on the number of city STCs we can exempt. The limit is on the end of our resolution timeframe, which is also 2022. And so council will look at, or sorry, maybe it's 2021. I'll have to look back at that. It might be 2021. They'll have to decide whether or not to keep that in place for an additional period of time or permanently. But we do not have a number of units that we have to stay within for city SDCs. It was Parks who was aiming just to make sure that they knew what they were getting into up front. So I hope to have more information for you guys by our next meeting on that topic. But do keep an eye on the Parks board agendas and see that may pop up at some point in the near future.
Is it something that we should write a letter in support of council's recommendation, or is that not worthy
Yes,
of looking
absolutely. Yes, please. Letters cannot possibly hurt.
Because I remember
Says your
I was
counsel.
at their public hearing with Barb and Justin when we asked for it initially, I think, and Cindy was there as well. And so I didn't think it would hurt if we as a committee were supportive of that. So I just put it out there.
I support that as well.
I see
Okay.
Ian's thumb up.
I think that gave us
Yeah.
the number of thumbs we need for me to get working on that. So thank you.
So Lynn, you said that it's a letter, a written request to the Parks and Rec board, but you're just not sure if that's been
Yeah.
received yet or if, okay.
Correct. So that was at last week's council meeting. And as of Friday, I believe our mayor, Sally Russell, was going to be signing that. I just don't know if she's actually hit forward on the email or not. So I'll try to have an update for you guys by our next meeting, if not before that, if that works for everyone. In the meantime, I will circle back on the letter and have Cindy prepare that, or I'll prepare it for Cindy's signature with obviously with what Cindy might like to say as the chair, if that works for folks. If there's anybody else who wants to, draft a letter, feel free. That's always helpful, but that is solidly part of my job also. So I'm happy to take it on. It's just, if you're feeling really passionate, feel free to let me know.
Yes, thank you so much, Lynn. And Rachel, I had another question. So we've exceeded the public service goals. We've reached that to 100%, and we still have some time left. Maybe someone else on the committee has the same question. Is that going to impede us for doing any additional public service goals in the future, since that's been reached, where the committee needs to focus on the other areas of importance?
Absolutely not, especially considering COVID. I think that we set those goals prior to COVID, and I think services are going to be needed greater now more than ever. It's really how we address what the community needs, not necessarily how we designed a plan a year before we could even conceive what has happened. So as long as the committee feels there's the need, keep funding those public services, and we can always, kind of reach those other goals with our affordable housing fund. I just think if you want to complete the breadth of the goals, to make sure that we're eyeing some of those other goals that we had when applications are brought before us.
Okay, good. That's good clarification, because I that's the answer I was hoping to hear. So thank you very much. Does anyone else have questions or input? So we haven't done a public hearing in a long time on the Affordable Housing Committee. So Lynn or Elizabeth, please step in and keep the direction going. On my notes, the staff report. So Lynn, was that update that you gave, is that part of the staff report, of part of the public hearing?
Not necessarily. I think you could probably open the public hearing and then we can see if there are folks on the line.
Okay, so I will call the public hearing open, stating that I am opening the public hearing. And Juan, thank you very much for your assistance here.
Absolutely, no problem. Happy to help. So for those of you who are joining us today during the meeting, this is the time for you. The public hearing is open now, and if you would like to provide public testimony, please follow the instructions that I'm going to put up on the screen. At this point, we don't have anybody joined by phone, so I won't go over the instructions for the phone, but I will post the instructions for those of you joining us live in the meeting, and I have those ready for you right here. As I share them, those my buttons. Maybe. Oh, I see. There we go. So
Juan
if you
is
would like,
sharing. Go ahead.
go ahead. Yeah, No, sorry about that. So if you would like to participate, this is the time for you to follow these instructions. Go ahead and find the participants button right on your screen. Click on that. It will bring up the participants pane on your right-hand side. And then if you look at the bottom of that participants pane, you'll find at the bottom right-hand corner the hand icon. And if you would like to raise your icon, if you would like to raise your hand, please click on that icon now, and we will call on you based on in the order that we see your hand pop up. So please, if you would like to provide testimony, this is the time. Otherwise, I'm not seeing anyone at this time.
I don't see it either.
Yeah. And yep, I still don't see anybody, so maybe.
So this is Elizabeth Oshel. Cindy, before you jump in, Associate City Attorney, just want to clarify, do you want to make Rachel's presentation and the information you heard from Lynn about the CAFR part of the record of the public hearing? You consider that part of what you're considering for the public hearing?
Rachel's review, her presentation, yes. I would think so, yes.
Okay, we just want to make that clear on the record that
Thank
would
you.
be considered for the public hearing. Thank you, Cindy.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. And then I'm thinking if there's no one from the public, is there anyone that's currently attending the meeting? Councillor Campbell, is there anyone who wants to share any comments or thoughts? Because you certainly are welcome to do so.
Thank you for the off, Cindy. I don't think I have any comments or thoughts. Just always my thanks to you for the work that you do, and just so fantastic that you're meeting your goals so far ahead on so many different things.
Thank you. That is fun to have that happen every once in a while.
It really, really is. Yes.
Well, if there's no additional comment or testimony, then I will officially close the public hearing. And upon
motion,
if there's any, I need a motion, but I need to, any additional committee discussion. I know I've given you guys many opportunities, but if there's any committee discussion or not, then we can move for a motion. So I would like to move for a motion. Please do.
I'm happy to move. I move to approve the 2019 Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report.
I second.
Second.
And I do have a clarification, Elizabeth. Since we've incorporated Rachel's presentation, we don't need to add that language onto the motion, do we?
No.
Perfect. All right. Any additional discussion?
Who seconded? I heard two people second. I don't know which one was.
Oh, I couldn't tell. Ian, okay. And then Heather.
Got it.
Right. So without any discussion, I'll go ahead and for your yay vote, I'll just go through my screen. And if you raise your hand, I'll state your vote. Allison, yay. Heather Simmons, the yes. Joanna Gardner, yes. Ian Schmidt is a yes. Martino, yes. Kathy Austin, yes. Priscilla Buck, yes. And Keith Wooden,
Yes.
Thank you. And Cindy King is a yes. So thank you very much. So thanks for putting that together. That's those charts are really informative and helpful. I'm glad someone knows how to do that. So next on the agenda are loan terms review. Now, last year I was able to attend the meetings, but this year I have not. But I understand we have some input from Matt and Ian, and is it Kathy? I'm going to stub my toe here. Were those the three people that were there? No. Okay. So for a summary, who would like to speak from the committee? I understand there might be some options to review and discussion on how you got there. And I'm not sure who the spokesperson is, if it's Matt or Ian or everyone is going to participate. Lynn, can you give a little direction there?
I think Rachel's going to walk you guys through a quick presentation. She's probably madly pulling it up right now as I'm trying to kill just a moment to give her some time. So she'll kind of give a summary of where folks landed. And then I think we were happy to open it up for Ian, Matt, or Keith to kind of defend where they were coming from, if that's what they'd like to do. And then I think the committee can discuss how you guys would like things to roll out in this year's RFP. It is hard to believe that we are almost in the RFP timeframe right now. Again, it's wild, but we are kicking it off this month with some informational workshops. You guys will hear a little bit more about this in the staff report, but until Rachel's able to pull up the right screen, I'll keep talking. So what we started doing a year or two ago was having informational meetings for potential applicants for our funding, either CDBG or Affordable Housing Fund. We decided to make that CDBG meeting required for anybody who has not already worked with us for CDBG. And honestly, I think we're still sort of working out the kinks with how often folks should be required to come. But because of so many new rules coming down, I feel pretty strongly that it's necessary to make sure folks know what our expectations are, what HUD's expectations are when they're using federal funding. Affordable Housing Fund, we have them there as well, but it's a little more optional, strongly recommended for new applicants for our fund. So that will kick off this month, and then we expect to release the RFPs in October. Again, we'll get into this in a sec. It looks like we're ready to dive into the loan terms.
All right, I just want to make sure you can all hear me. I'm not.
So far, so good.
Okay. So as some of you are aware, but I want to make sure that our new committee members are aware, is that in order to allow affordable housing program resources to grow over time and to have that greater long-term impact on the community, the City of Bend has a policy of providing loans rather than grants whenever possible. And so there is a policy specifically when CDBG funds are available, if it's a public service, essentially if it doesn't generate any kind of income whatsoever, those public services projects are given as grants, but everything else is a loan so that it can deed restrict the property to make sure that it's affordable in the long term. In addition, those loan payments, however drawn out or extended over time, come back into the program and help us sustain continued affordable housing in the community. So when considering our loan term options every year before we put out our request for proposals, we want to make sure that we're kind of matching what current market conditions look like. And current market conditions today are kind of unprecedented. As the pandemic continues, the fallout's uncertain. And so we were going to put together a loan terms subcommittee. However, because of the craziness of these times, we thought it was just important to bring this topic to the entire committee for discussion. And so staff put together, with input from the loan terms committee, just like 3 quick options to throw out there to facilitate a discussion amongst you all about what loan terms you think would be best considering these circumstances. And I'm excited to hear from all of you that are kind of out there working amongst the housing market right now to see what your thoughts on are, what those terms should be, and kind of come to a decision as a committee here today. So a couple of those options would be, all right, why is it not going to the next slide? There we go. These are the current loan terms. We could keep them as is. With home buyer assistance, that's often down payment assistance as a silent, non-amortizing loan for 30 years. And then essentially that allows them to pay off the mortgage for the home. And then in that year 31, it becomes fully amortized and they pay back the city loan for about 10 years at a rate of 5% interest, essentially repaid by year 40. Acquisitions of land trusts. Land trusts are kind of unique, and so we wanted to make sure that we were giving them an opportunity to kind of experiment in Central Oregon. And so we decided as a committee last year was that we could have loan terms for silent until year 20 with 0% interest, and then terms revisited at year 20. Just to kind of see how the house turns over. If it turns over, how long is it held by the initial homeowner? Those additional acquisitions or construction or rehabilitation or land development kind of had two options, whether it could be 40-year amortizing at 1% or 40-year interest only for the first 10 years, amortizing at 3% after those first 10 years. And then, of course, shelters would just be a deed restriction on the land, only due upon sale, refi, or non-compliance at 0% interest. That non-compliance would also, require them to maintain as a shelter or whatever kind of community service benefit they were providing that didn't have any kind of return on investment. So those are the current loan terms. It was proposed that perhaps loan terms get changed or adjusted between nonprofits and for-profits. So one of the proposals was nonprofit acquisition, construction, rehab, land development, or infrastructure at 40 years, amortizing at 0.5% interest, whereas for-profits could have the same opportunity at 40-year at 2% interest. I think the handout you all got might have had like some typos. So that third option could potentially be that acquisition, construction, rehab, land development, infrastructure, 40-year only for first 10 years and amortizing at 1.5% interest with the other terms remaining or the other options remaining the same. So these are just three options to facilitate a discussion. Kind of it's open for any of these to be altered or maintained the same. Any questions? I just probably should add before you ask questions is that all proposals can request in front of AHAC or within their proposal a loan term that is not offered in the RFP or that is different from what the RFP proposes. It's just they have to make sure that those loan terms proposed are in their proposal and presented when they present their proposal, or schedule time in front of the AHAC to make those changes after they've been awarded.
So I have a quick question.
Yes, Kathy.
I don't really understand any of this, so I'm not going to give input on my opinions. I just have one quick question, and that has to do with how flummoxed Habitat was when they got the information about loans, and also how the land trust was having trouble making it work. And I'm just wondering, do these proposals address those problems, or did the problems get resolved in some other way?
We didn't really have verbiage at that time for land trust. If I'm speaking out of turn, let me know. But we did add that kind of after the fact. And we did clarify that if any of these loan terms were not suitable for a particular project, that they could request a different term, but we just wanted to see why it wasn't suitable. I guess I'll transition that into what I was kind of proposing. When we initially thought of all of these and kind of came together on a general consensus, it was understood that a subcommittee was having to meet almost annually to decide loan terms that were specific for each individual project. And it was becoming a little bit cumbersome and time consuming to get that, especially if we had multiple RFPs with different projects. So we wanted to provide a template that these different applicants could follow and quote unquote expect. We also wanted to leave the door open for an alternative interpretation or request if these terms weren't going to make a project feasible. So really, when we put these together, it was understood like, hey, here's your platform. Here's kind of what you can expect. Obviously, if it doesn't work, request it and tell us why. We don't want to just say, oh, it doesn't work. I want 0% interest and never repay this thing, because we wanted to continue to cycle. Obviously, we're in a unique situation right now where COVID and some other factors have caused interest rates to drop. But if we're continually being reactionary in our pricing, then what's going to happen if interest rates rise again and all of a sudden we're under market by a lot? Are we going to adjust this again? One problem I have with looking on this, if I'm going to jump into the discussion, is it looks like almost like we're decentivizing for-profit. I don't want to do that. I want to bring more players to the table. Nonprofit, for-profit, I think they should follow the same terms. But if the terms don't work for them, I want to know why. I want to see the numbers, because I like to consider myself a numbers guy. I want to know why these numbers are not going to work for that project, because we're trying to cycle money, and we're trying to fund as much as possible, whether it be services, whether it be doors, whether it be infrastructure, homeless, whatever. We need to make sure our money's coming back if possible. And if it's not going to come back because our loan terms don't work, I want to know why.
I'll second those comments from Matt. And Matt and I hadn't actually planned this in the slightest, but my thoughts are very much in the same line. I appreciate the role that nonprofits have played in the development of affordable housing in Bend. I think that they've done remarkably well. I think there's a pretty clear limit of how many nonprofits could reasonably operate in the Bend area. And I think that there are a lot of builders and parties that could be part of this process of providing affordable housing in our area. And I think they should have whether or not it's exactly the same, I think the spread was feeling a little large to me. And so my opinion is that they should be on the same terms or very, very similar. I don't think this committee has a responsibility to inherently fund nonprofits by providing higher cost terms to for-profit agencies. I believe that the highest and greatest good in terms of providing more housing is, as Matt said, bringing more players to the table, having better options, and really letting that innovation happen.
I believe the terminology is called desperate impact that I was looking for.
Disparate. That with an E or with an I, Matt?
Disparate or desperate?
Disparate.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think Wish Camper is a really good example of a for-profit builder coming in and being able to perform. And I would agree with the sentiment of both Ian and Matt of not creating a disincentive to that type of development. So I would support not having such either any difference or such a large difference myself.
Priscilla, I think you have your hand up. So
I do. I guess, first of all, I had a question, and that is, I think first a statement. I think that laying out these terms is a step forward for our committee, and I think it creates a transparency that is helpful for everyone that we work with, for-profit and not-for-profit. The second is I do agree that the differential between for-profit and not-for-profit seems to me too great, particularly in the current climate. And then my other comment is I do believe that some differential should remain in place. Not-for-profits, by definition, do not ultimately benefit any individual investor. They benefit the community. That is why they have tax exempt status. And I think that it is important to continue that investment in the community via not-for-profit. So I would, as I said, I in favor of a smaller differential, but I would be opposed to doing away with all differential between the two types of builders. And then I guess the other question I had, and I think it has been answered, currently, because these are so new, we have not set up an interval to review them. And I personally think an annual review, given how important these are, is not too much. So I guess I would be in favor of sort of formalizing that we review these annually. So those are my comments.
If it's okay that I step in really quickly, just to very quick, kind of to summarize the question, the answer to the question that Kathy asked, and then to also to Priscilla. Kathy, we did allow, I think last year, both Core Community Land Trust, because they were so new and we were grappling with how to deal with land trust, and Habitat to come into the loan subcommittee and present their case for why terms should or shouldn't change. As a result of that, actually, Habitat came in and said, not a problem. We ran the numbers again. We're good to go, and did not request any changes. And then Core presented their case, which was very similar, I think, to the discussions that staff had with Habitat. And that's where that new land trust provision came out. Is Rachel, was that a year ago? Do you recall? I feel like it was a while, but it's all blending together to me these days.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. And Priscilla agreed, like this is, I think, the second year, maybe third that we've done this, but it takes time to really see the effect of this. And so we are more than happy to do this on an annual basis or more often if that's needed as economic conditions change and as we sort of continue to figure out what works both for the players that are in town now, and we are seeing a lot of interest from folks, new people in town, coming to town to build here. So I think that's a very reasonable thing, and certainly happy to do that. And also, if you want to be part of that subcommittee, we will reach out to you when that time comes again.
So I have one more quick question, Lynn. Did we adopt, I can't remember, and I apologize for my faulty memory, have we adopted an official definition of a land trust?
Yeah, so we created a definition and I don't have it in front of me. And really what we had done was differentiate land trust from land lease. That was really what we were trying to get to the root of, is what, how should we categorize the folks that we're working with right now? So we do, and if it's okay, maybe I would offer to send that to you after the meeting, or if I can find it on my hard drive in the very near future, I will get it out to all of you guys.
Yes, I think I've read that. I have seen it and I have it here somewhere. I just can't remember if we formally adopted it. So it's transparent and public.
Got it. And Rachel, or Kathy even, I cannot recall if there was a vote on that specifically.
Not that I recall. I just remember going over the definition.
Yeah.
I don't remember either. I don't think so.
Certainly something we could do in an upcoming meeting.
So this is Heather. I just clarify, and I apologize if I'm traveling ground that's already been well traveled. So as I understand it, these options sort of came into being maybe last year, or they were clarified last year. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And the
And so-
that you have in front of you are the current loan terms that are in a request for proposal. And that's what we're deciding whether or not we need to alter it today or not.
Okay. So besides the current state of the economy, what are and given that these are fairly new, so we may not have enough experience with identifying what's working or what's not working, is it really just the economy that was driving these other options to consider?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And again, even when I started on this committee, gosh, was it 3 years ago? We really didn't have any outline of loan terms. It was, we had an idea and we decided to formalize it so people would know what to expect and how to fill in that part of their application. So everyone knew what was happening. So this is relatively new. I'm getting a sense that maybe people are not in favor of option 2. Option 2 seems to be the option with the biggest differential between nonprofit and for-profit. And I'm just throwing it out here for discussion. And then of course we could even modify the current terms and add a little bit from option 1 and option 3. But I don't want to muddy the water, but my sense right now is that option 2 may not be the most favored option. If we wanted to simplify and if it's appropriate, maybe just take that one off the table and see option 1 is our current loan terms. And I do like what Priscilla mentioned, reviewing this every year, because things change all the time. And everyone on the committee, I think you all know, but I want you to for sure know that things are reviewable all the time. So I do like that. And I think our loan subcommittee is great. I mean, Matt and Ian, you guys can do numbers in your head. That's just not, I didn't get that gift. I can do other things, but that. So I really appreciate all of your time on that committee. Keith, did you have anything to add, or Ian or Matt, just based on my input there?
Adjusting to market conditions does make sense, especially if bank money is cheaper than what the city's giving out.
Yeah.
I think that maybe putting something in writing where we're going to review these formally before RFPs, that way we can adjust for market conditions at that time, would be beneficial. I do like option 3 for adjusting some of the interest rate numbers. Obviously, it's not going to generate a lot of recapture when it comes to our funds going out the door, but it's also beneficial to the people utilizing it because it's kind of below market right now.
Do you have your crystal ball to know how long that below market might last?
Mine exploded on March 13th.
Do you have any comparables that are aiding the suggestion to increase the interest rate? Or are we just...
Can I jump in if it's okay? I'm sorry, Matt. I'd love to hear your answer to that. But just a reminder to this committee that most of the folks that we work with do go out and get conventional financing for the portion that they can. So they're maxing out typically their conventional is not the right word, but their traditional bank loan. But because the rents do not cover the cost of developing these properties, rents or sale price, there's a gap there. And that's really where we operate, is where nobody else is going to lend. I feel very strongly that the city does not want to compete with the private market at all, even if that was an option. And let me tell you, we are nowhere near the productivity that Matt and his team are, or many of the other financial institutions in town. So our goal really is to supplement what's already happening out in the market, and help cover the gap, as we call it, in what can be obtained through traditional financing, and then what can't be in order to make these developments pencil. So I just felt like it was worth clarifying that. I hope that's okay. I keep jumping in like this, but definitely want to be sure that we have no intention of competing with the market. I don't think that's what we're talking about, but just to clarify.
And I'll have to clarify what I just said as well. My notes that I had written prior to this had the two numbers mixed up, what we currently have versus what was proposed. I thought that what was proposed was dropping down to 40-year AM at 1%, and we were currently at 40-year AM with 1.5. So actually what's currently in place is a little bit more appetizing than option number 3. So I'm going to retract my previous statement.
Yeah, my thinking on
that
this
was
is if there's no problem that we have to solve, and we're not aware of any challenges per se, I don't know that we should change the terms, especially given the clause around applicants being able to negotiate, if you will, other terms if they're not working.
And I was just about to say the same thing as Heather, so I'm just going to say I agree with Heather. It sounds like we don't really need to change this, and if it's not working for someone, if they propose formally to us why that is and an alternative, at least that's an option for them. So I would think we should just stay with the way it's written right now.
Agreed. And when we originally met, the group of us, we kind of ran some numbers on some scenarios that were being requested at that time, and they penciled. I mean, again, the shoe's not going to fit for all situations, which is why we kind of leave it open. But they were able to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish with these terms at that time, and so that's kind of why we just threw it in place as a template.
Great. Thank you for all of that good discussion and input. So I'm just going to summarize what I'm hearing. What I'm hearing is it sounds like option 1, which is retaining what we have. And I don't know if we need to mention within the RFP applications that if an applicant wants to modify or needs to modify what loan terms we are offering, if they put that in their application up front, or if that verbiage is already a part of their RFP. I think it is, because that's what we tried to funnel that down here in the last 2 years. But what I'm hearing is that option 1, keep it as it is, but allowing applicants to plead their case if they want an alternative. Am I hearing everyone correctly? Am I missing anything?
No, do we need to make a motion?
I think so. I think we're ready for a motion, a sample motion.
I move to keep the loan terms for affordable housing program resources the same at option 1 shown on the list, and allow applicants to request a change in loan terms if they cannot meet the requirements set forth here, but they need to prove their case as to why.
I second.
Second.
Any additional questions or discussion, thoughts, input? All right. We will go for a vote, and for all ayes, my screen changed, so it's going to be a little different order than it has been. So wake up. In favor of that, Ian Schmidt. Aye. Matt Martino is an aye. Kathy Austin. Aye. Heather Simmons. Aye. Allison Hohengarten. Aye. Joanna Gardner. Aye. Priscilla Buck. Aye. And Keith Wood.
Aye.
And Cindy King would be an aye. Thank you. Thank you. What a great conversation. And every time we talk about loan terms, I'm always learning something more about options. So again, thank you, those of you who are on that subcommittee, putting your brain cells together and coming up with really good discussion points. I think next on our agenda is staff report, and I think they have been very busy and Lynn might have quite a few things to update us on. So Lynn, you have the floor, or the screen, so to speak.
Hope everybody has a snack with them today and within reach. We have been super busy, and it feels like, although we only missed one meeting in August, I hope everybody was able to get out of town or do something enjoyable, even if it was in your house. There's a lot that's been going on. Summer has not been sort of the downtime for us recently. So I think first off, if it's okay, I'm actually going to turn it back over to Kathy and Ian. We worked closely together along with Cindy on some recent code packages that are still making their way through. And I think they are the best to give you guys an update on status of that and sort of any sort of follow-up that you all may desire. Is that okay, Kathy?
Okay, I unmuted myself. Yeah, thank you, Lynn. So let's see, where to begin. Ian and I have been a part of this stakeholder group for those of you who are relatively new. And we've been working with Pauline and getting a lot of input virtually since COVID hit. But there's a package of recommendations that went to the Planning Commission for a study session, and I sat in on that. And the study session was very positive. However, the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance had some extreme concerns about the micro units. They were fine with all of the recommendations we were making to respond to HB 2001. But the micro units was sort of a separate subject that was in response to the City Council directing staff to look at a single room occupancy type of ordinance. It's been renamed micro units. And so the recommendation from our committee was and from staff, was to allow them in all residential zones. During the subsequent hearing, the Planning Commission decided to remove them from the low residential as well as standard residential, with the exception of the areas in standard residential that are a commercial, neighborhood commercial. And so as it stands right now, that's what's being proposed to the City Council. I don't think Ian would mind if I mentioned that he and I are both on the local American Institute of Architects section in Bend, and along with the letter that Cindy wrote in support of the changes, our AIA also wrote a letter in support of the proposed changes to the zoning code. So as it stands right now, the proposal is going for a study session with the City Council. And I think there may be some support in the community to put the micro units back into all residential zones. However, as it stands right now, it's only in the neighborhood commercial for the standard residential, and then all the other zones can have it. And Ian brought up a really good point that it kind of went against the Fair Housing Act when the neighborhood groups were saying we should only just have it in the central core. And as most of you know, the central core is in a census tract that's the poorest census tract in town, and it would have unfairly put this housing type in just one census tract. So I think it's up to each of you to decide if you want to support it going back into all residential zones, but this is where it's standing right now. And I think that we need to write a letter again for the City Council for their work session in support of these changes. And I put it out there to you whether or not you want to weigh in on that issue about micro units or not. And I know that our AIA group is planning to also write another letter in support for the City Council. And I believe we've also got a meeting coming up on the 16th with Pauline to review the draft of the state ordinance to see if there's anything that we need to revise on our proposals to match the model code, or to at least not be in conflict with the model code that's coming through in the state. And Lynn, if I've misspoken anything, please correct me. No, okay, so that's
Yeah.
pretty much it for me. And I don't know if Ian wants to add anything to that.
I think that's a good summary, thank you, Kathy.
Mhm.
It felt like, and maybe the part that I'll touch on because Kathy did such a great job of covering the facts, I'll say it was one of the meetings at where I felt there was maybe the most consensus on the items that we were discussing. It felt like it was a really clear session of various organizations that in general supported a lot of the same things for a whole set of disparate reasons. And that was, it also, I think anecdotally, I'd say it feels like those joint sessions are really starting to hit their stride, where different organizations that are coming to the table are beginning to understand how we can work together, what views people are going to bring, and what sorts of issues need to be addressed, and getting some of those issues heard sooner, maybe instead of later, where changes would be proposed and then organizations would bring feedback in. It feels like we're getting more feedback and sooner from a wide range, and I guess the feelings in the meeting are collegial and really positive.
Yeah, I would
mine.
second that. Yeah, it was very positive, and I was particularly pleased that there wasn't any pushback on our parking reductions, because that's usually a knee-jerk reaction to not agree to that. But the Planning Commission seemed to be very supportive. BDAB was supportive, NLA was supportive. Really, the only bone of contention was the micro units. At least that's what it seemed to me.
So the pushback was that they wanted to allow them on RM zone, not RS.
Or RL, yeah. And Pauline gave an example of a fairly modest, more an example that looked very similar to a larger single-family home, 1,800 square foot, that had 4 micro units and one space that was a kitchen, living room, dining room area. And I think it could fit very well in an RS. It's at the same time, I was pointing out that these are very expensive units to do because of the number of bathrooms and the kind of construction that it's required, and that it's pretty unlikely we're going to see a plethora of them. I think I think there was a lot of fear that they were going to show up and everybody's next door neighbor, they're going to tear down a house and build a micro unit development, and it's just highly unlikely. And the point that we were trying to make is that we're trying to eliminate restrictions, kind of get out of the way and let options be available. But the NLA was extremely upset. There were people from all different neighborhood groups weighing in, thinking this was terrible and that it should never be allowed in RS, and then obviously not in an RL. So there were some very strong feelings there. And I thought that Scott did a good job on Planning Commission of saying, well, we do have neighborhood commercial in RS, and that seems like it would be a really good opportunity to do something mixed use in those locations. And nobody seemed to have a problem with that.
So I have a quick question. Is there any concern on the lending side of loaning on a micro unit development, for lack of a better word? Are there loan programs available for that? And I don't know the answer, so that's why I'm asking. Is there any concern about that?
So I could try to address that, and then I would ask that Keith or Matt or one of the folks who's a little more involved with certain types of financing jump in if I'm getting this wrong. My understanding is it's very hard to finance these. So I think that, we approached this work session with the idea that these are going to be hard enough to build. And we probably don't need to create too many additional barriers. But yes, my understanding is it's very challenging. I don't believe you can receive any sort of HUD-backed funding or federally backed funding to develop SRO type units because they are not a complete residential dwelling per HUD. I could be way out of line in saying that, but that's my understanding.
I am sure they're difficult to fund. I mean, I haven't been involved in them, but I would think that lenders, it's hard enough to get lending on apartments, let alone something like this. I think that, if anything, there might be a small scale one attempted. I mean, the ones that I'm familiar with are in Seattle and San Francisco and San Diego, and they're done with a large and well-established nonprofit that is getting formerly homeless people off the street, and it's often combined with something like a restaurant that trains people on the first floor. I mean, it's a major investment. Yeah, that doesn't mean that something more modest could happen here. And one of the points that was brought up is that it could be something available for young people getting out of college that gives them an opportunity to live somewhere. There's an example in San Luis Obispo where that's exactly what being used is people first getting out of college and not being able to afford anything else. So, there may be opportunities locally, but I think I would defer to Matt and some of the others that are more familiar, but just getting a builder being willing to risk doing something new is really hard, and then getting something new financed is really difficult in my experience.
If I'm understanding, it sounds like it's really hard to get a loan for this kind of project. It's unlikely, or at least we think it's unlikely, that there will be many requests, if any. So if that's the case, this probably shouldn't be the hill we die on, right? Over getting this through.
Well, it's interesting. It's like it ran interference for all the other stuff that we're doing, because I think if it didn't happen, the neighborhood groups would have focused on some of the other things that we're trying to do. I would agree with you, Heather. I don't want to die on this one, but at the same time, there's a part of me that thinks, well, geez, this should be available to be allowed, at least in the RS. I could see giving up on the RL, but I could go either way. But I do think at least allowing it in neighborhood commercial as a sort of a mixed use thing could help. I also think that it would be more likely to see these units in a mix of another apartment building where the other apartments are to a degree subsidizing these smaller units. And I do think we may see something like this come up in the central district. But I just think the whole exercise that we're doing is to try to eliminate obstacles and make creativity have a way of solving these problems and allowing it to happen. And so taking it out of the RS, I don't think is a positive thing to do. I could see taking it out of the RL because honestly, in terms of sewer hookups and so forth, it could be a real challenge in RL.
I generally agree with Kathy. I agree, Heather, that there's a level of political capital that I don't think this committee probably needs to expend on this issue. Development-wise, I don't think Bend would, in any case, see more than a few of these over the next number of years. The business plan for them, the comps for them, in a lot of ways, I would be very surprised to see very many of them coming in. But I do believe that in terms of new housing types, which is something this committee is consistently interested in, is allowing for innovation in the housing sector to try to address some of the deep difficulties we face. I'd love to see at least an opportunity for these to occur. And all Bend have, and for the foreseeable future, will always struggle to find a piece of dirt to put a project on. And so arbitrarily limiting the areas in which these could happen is just one more significant hurdle. So do they need to exist in a remarkably low density neighborhood? Probably not, but I think that they are a very reasonable, normal, and in some places housing type. And we should at least advocate for maybe not great leniency, but certainly a level of availability that gives them an opportunity. You know, one of the reasons we're talking about it is because in so many ways they fit the character of Bend. They fit a lot of the family units that live in Bend. Young folks that may be recently out on their own, or people who aren't planning on putting down roots for a long period of time. People who just need somewhere to be for a while. I think they hit a lot of what Bend could use and may be a good solution. I'd like to see it, a few of them at least try.
Yeah,
And
that
I
makes
would like
sense.
to say it's a matter of equity, honestly. And if
Yes.
you look at a map of the zoning map of our city, we're mostly RS. And so by taking it out of that, you're eliminating the
Yes.
vast majority of the area of the town in which these could be located. So, you know, personally, I would like to recommend our committee saying a letter, something to the effect like, well, we can see RL is not necessarily appropriate, but we feel it should be allowed in the RS. You know, whether,
Yeah, I support that very strongly, Kathy. Whereas I also, you know, the political capital and is this the hill we want to die on? I understand all those practical reasons, and I've been having this discussion within my head. But we have an issue, we have a historical issue with fair housing here. And we do have an issue, a statement that I think we need to make around equity. And so particularly for RS, and maybe the olive branch is RL, that we step back from that, but that's where I would land also on this issue. So.
thank you.
Great discussion. Thank you, Dean and Kathy, for going to those meetings and being involved and being the face of the Affordable Housing Committee. Just appreciate your time doing that.
Could I ask, and Kathy, I'll say thank you to you. The question I first wanted to ask is, what would this look like in an RS zone? And you already answered that. It might look exactly like a single family home from the outside. And I'm assuming this is something that hasn't been mentioned. I mean, they'll have to meet all of the same, they'll fall under all of the same restrictions as any other single family home in the zone, wouldn't they? As far as like height and lot setbacks, maybe
Not entirely, Barb. There's
Mm.
some reductions in the required amount of parking, and there's some reductions
Oh.
in some of the setbacks. The height limitation is similar.
Okay.
And it really depends on whether it's being located next to an existing built out property, or if it's part of a larger development. So for instance, if it's part of the annexation areas where they're developing an entire subdivision, the setbacks can be a little bit less than if it's being an infill parcel next to already existing single family. So there are a lot of requirements, but at the same time, it's a little bit more relaxed. So I don't want to misrepresent that. But I do think, you know, these are units that I think, is the max 400 square feet, or was it even less than that? It's like 380 or something. It's a very small unit.
I believe just under 400, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think we wound up with 0.5 parking spaces. So if there were, say, 4 of these units, they might have 2 parking spaces, something like that. So it is a little bit less parking, and I don't want to gloss over that. But I do think, given how much of our city is RS, that it makes sense to allow them from an equity point of view. And I would say as the olive branch, I think is what Priscilla said, is just to, back off from the RL, but support that this be allowed in the RS.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful. Thanks. It really has been a really great discussion. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell, for always being there at our meetings. We do like your input.
Thank you. And Cindy, don't you ever, you do such a good job. You do not need to apologize for being a little, I think we're all kind of frazzled and scatterbrained and different ways of stress right now. I'm happy to hear your family's okay. That's really good news.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Lynn, your screen keeps changing, so now you moved over to the right side. So do you want to jump back to additional updates?
Yeah, so thank you all. That's great. We will proceed. I also next wanted to hand it over to Elizabeth. You guys should have all received the election advocacy memo and additional information sometime in the past couple of weeks. And just to have the opportunity for you guys to ask questions, I think Elizabeth can give, a 2-minute overview of sort of things to be cautious about. This is always a good reminder, in my opinion, as we approach a very contentious election season. I guess we're kind of in the middle of it already, aren't we? Anyway, as we approach the election, good to have some reminders. You all are representatives of the city and your role on this committee, and just to make sure that you all stay safe out there and follow the ethical rules.
Thank you, Lynn, and I'll even turn my camera on for this. So hello, everyone. There's a little bit of child ruckus happening in the background. I apologize if any of that makes its way through over the microphone. But so as Lynn said, in your role as committee members, there are some restrictions on you regarding the upcoming election and any election, but it is only restrictions on you as a committee member. In your private and personal capacities, you are free to campaign for, advocate for, or against whatever you want that is on the ballot. But as a member of the committee, you may not advocate for or against any measure or candidate that is up for election. And this includes the city's transportation bond measure, which has now been filed with the county clerk and will be on the November ballot. And so what that means is you can say, me, Elizabeth Oshel, I have this information because I'm on the Affordable Housing Committee, and me as an individual, I support or don't support whatever issue is on the ballot. That's absolutely fine. You can use the information you know of as your membership in this committee. You can reference that you're a member of this committee if you wanted to, but you can't say, the committee asked me to ask you to vote this way. We're not asking you to do any of that. We never would ask you to do that in your role as a committee member. And you can't say something like, as a member of the Affordable Housing Committee, I think X, Y, or Z on some issue that's on the ballot. So personal capacity, you can hold whatever position you like. In your capacity as a committee member, you are not allowed to campaign or advocate for or against anything that's on the ballot. If there's any questions, I'm happy to try and answer them. Allison? Yeah. I hear you, Allison. It doesn't look like you're on mute, though. No. Do you want to try and type a question into the chat? Can't hear you either, Lynn. You're on mute.
I think you're on mute, Lynn.
Oh my gosh, I'm a nerd. Okay, if you type in to the chat, it'll go either Juan or whoever is hosting the meeting right now, and then that person can read your comment. It's a little clunky, but.
Hit the little button that looks like somebody's speaking, or just a little, like a cartoon thing, circle. And it should bring up the chat.
The other thing is for folks, while Allison's trying to get that going, if you guys have questions about any of this after the fact, feel free to reach out to me and I can connect you with Elizabeth or whatever is appropriate there. So please do not hesitate. And Allison, if we can't get you online or chatting, why don't you either email me or email Elizabeth? Is it okay if she emails you directly? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And there's also the Oregon Elections Division, which is who we as the attorneys call sometimes when we have questions. You are free. They have a publicly available phone number on, if you just Google Oregon Elections Division. And if you have a question about a statement you want to make or something you want to sign, you can always ask us, but you can also always call the Elections Division directly. And they just love when people ask them questions and are concerned about these kinds of things. So don't hesitate to contact them, but also don't hesitate to contact me.
Okay, thank you. So I think hopefully Allison and I can connect after this, or you and Elizabeth, either way. And let's move on if that's okay. Juan, if you end up getting communication from Allison, you can interrupt me at any point. So as we said, lots going on. You guys were actually the first in the city to receive and allocate CARES Act funding. That was the relief package that came through the federal government. There was an additional amount that went down to each state. And if your jurisdiction had a population over 500,000, you got that directly from the federal government. Bend, of course, is not there right now. And so we waited for the state to hand that out. Bend, they did it basically as a certain per capita amount. That's how they divided it across the state. And these funds had to be used for COVID relief in some way, shape, or form. You guys are familiar, federal funding always has lots of strings attached. That was true with this as well. So Bend received $2.9 million just within, I guess, the last month, I want to say, maybe a little bit longer than that. And what we did was we estimate our expenses through December 31 will be about $900,000. So we held back that portion to account for additional expenses we had already incurred, as well as anything that might come forward before December 31st. The additional $2 million was divided between $1 million went to the chamber for small business assistance, and you guys may have been seeing their emails about getting that money out the door. The other $1 million went for both rent assistance and childcare, as well as sort of overall support to vulnerable populations. So really excited to see, $2 million of our $2.9 million going out into the community and hopefully getting to the people who most need it, whether they're business owners or individuals. So I'm very excited that the city stepped up in that way. And it felt like not at all contentious that was the right thing to do among city leadership. So just very thankful for that. We created the core area urban renewal, or TIF plan. So that went through city council. Many of you guys were part of those discussions. This has to do with the central area, or core area, as you want to describe it. It was a very long process with a ton of public involvement. And there were 5 main things identified for those TIF funds that are eventually collected by the city. And affordable housing was, near the top of the list, as well as infrastructure improvements, or also things like parks and open space, some business assistance, et cetera. So my understanding is that we landed at about 18% of the TIF funds over the term of that urban renewal area, or TIF plan area. That should, if our calculations are correct, lead to about $23 million of affordable housing assistance. You guys will probably be leaned on to help get that out the door when it finally starts coming in, as you did with the Murphy Crossing area as well. So just wanted to let you know that's out there, really exciting. We probably won't see that money at the earliest until 2022 or 2023, the Affordable Housing Group. But still, this is super exciting stuff, and that is a significant commitment to affordable housing that really will help get that area sort of going, bring some more people in, and hopefully, in addition, support the businesses that also need to grow in that area. You can look also, there's a ton of information, and let me just make sure I have the date right. City Council heard that and got a huge presentation on August 5th. So if you go to the agenda for that day, you can pull up tons of materials and maps and helpful information on that if you want to do more research in there. You all weighed in on the Murphy Crossing Urban Renewal or TIF plan, and that went forward. So we collective we City of Bend / Urban Renewal Agency issued an RFP for affordable housing for $750,000. One applicant, that was Wish Camper Development Group. They are in that area. We are in process of working towards their closing next week and getting that money out the door. So super exciting. Thank you all for the help with that. It was great. And I think staff really appreciated having some expertise in that discussion from all of you helping determine what to do. So it sounds like Allison may have a mic again. Allison, did you want to jump back in?
I think I'm.
Okay. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Hooray. Yes, I visited this many times before, and I think I understand it. But one thing Elizabeth said just sort of confused me, so I will go back and look at it specifically. Also, because I can do that in my personal capacity, not during this meeting, which makes sense.
Okay. Thank you. So we talked about the Parks SDC. I will keep you guys posted as we go. It sounds like we're writing a letter, so I'll definitely, I'll share not only the letter that Cindy signed on behalf of Planning Commission, but whatever comes out for the SDC discussion as well. So another thing that happened pretty recently is in late June, the legislature met for a marathon emergency session, and they passed a bill called House Bill 4212. And within that bill, section 10 and 11, I believe, there were two things that affect affordable housing. One was what we're calling the shelter supersiting provision. So this is sort of the reenactment of a bill that was in the regular session, House Bill 4001 earlier this spring. And that, of course, didn't go anywhere due to the walkout and quick ending of that session. This allows for emergency shelters to be sited anywhere within a UGB without regard to zoning or development code. So really big deal. So there's no conditional use permit. There's no, sorry, you can't go there because the zone doesn't line up with it, et cetera. There is a 90-day window in which folks can apply, and they do have to meet certain conditions. Like they have to have the ability to obtain building permits. That's health and safety related issues. Building code is good. And so that has to be met in order to ensure that we're not putting people in a more dangerous situation. It can't be in places that are prone to natural disasters. So like a floodplain in Bend is probably the best example. But lots and lots of ability to really get flexible with what we are and aren't able to do. It also removed the siting of an emergency shelter from being a land use decision, which means that if somebody wants to appeal that decision, they have to take it to circuit court and not to LUBA, the Land Use Board of Appeals. So really big deal. Right now, I'm primary point of contact for applications that come in through that. We are actively working with two different groups on shelter siting, and there are two others kind of in the wings, including our winter warming shelter, which is actively looking for a location, in which case they can utilize this application if they can get us an application, a complete application by September 28th. So that's our deadline for that. Very exciting stuff. We'll keep you in the loop. Veterans Village, I think, intends to submit this week. So you guys will probably hear more about that. They've been actively working. We're also closely working with a group that is mostly led by St. Vincent de Paul, hoping to do some sort of transitional village or emergency situation with that on a couple of small lots that they have in town. The second part of that statute that's really related to you guys is parking. So this statute allowed for a very limited time, and this is not just the application window, but the entirety. Folks can car camp more or less on select places without being removed. And this is, again, in response to the COVID virus and needing to keep people as safe as possible. So that use expires on September 28th. We are actively working with a handful of folks in the community who really would like to use this, mostly faith-based institutions of different types. And so really we should know more about this in the near future, but that bill really sort of opened the door and got people thinking differently about how can we keep people safe, even if we can't build housing quick enough to get them in. So very exciting stuff. Happy to answer any questions on that if folks have it. And then I can give you guys a report after we move forward with that. I've been in very close contact with Eugene and Medford, who are two of the other cities dealing with this, as well as of yesterday, Hood River, I guess, has some potential applications. So, you know, it's a strong network, thankfully, because we are kind of making up rules on the fly, figuring it all out together. So it's really great to have that support from other jurisdictions. Karen Morris,
our link. Can you send
Sure.
a link out to that?
Yeah.
Was it a bill that passed, or is it?
It is, yeah. And if
Okay.
you're, you know, really desperate to know before I get that link out to you, you can just Google Oregon House Bill 4212. It passed, I believe, June 26th in the legislature, and then it was signed, I think, on the 30th. So, so that is the rundown of that. There's all sorts of other stuff. They gave us a little bit more breadth in how we hold public meetings and things like that. I'm not an expert on those sections of the bill, but yes, I will send it out. Thank you. I meant to pull up the flyer on this, but Karen Morris, our ADA advocate with the city, I think her title is Accessibility Manager, sent out a really interesting training opportunity that I thought some of you may be interested in. It's called Raise the Roof. And the goal here is to train folks who can support people with disabilities to become informed advocates for housing. So you, in participating in this training, if you so choose, would become more or less a mentor to other folks in the Bend community who want to figure out how to do better service to folks with disabilities. So I will send out the information to that after this meeting. I would encourage anyone who's interested to sign up. Let me know if you have questions and I can connect you with Karen. But that's certainly an area where I think more knowledge is good for all of us. Rachel, can I turn it over to you for the RFP timing overview? Okay. I am going to move past that till Rachel's ready to go because I think she's going to share a screen. Oh yeah, here we go. And then Rachel, don't forget to unmute yourself when you're ready.
Okay. So the affordable housing funding schedule is before you, and we have two new committee members. So I want to make sure that I kind of walk them through what this looks like. On September 21st in the afternoon and October 1st in the morning, I will be teaching training for any potential applicants for funding. And then applicants that have been funded in the past might not need to attend, but they would need to contact me to discuss that if attending is necessary or not. And then on October 2nd, after those trainings, we'll put out the request for proposals. They'll be due a month later. And when we get those proposals, staff will put them all together and then send them out to you. We'll make sure that they're all eligible for funding before we send them out to you. We take a good look over them. Sometimes it's back and forth with the applicants. We might need a few more things, a few more details. So those go out to staff, and then you get to review them as soon as we get them to you. There'll be oral presentations to the Affordable Advisory Committee, Affordable Housing Advisory Committee on December 9th for the Affordable Housing Fund presentations, and on January 13th for the Community Development Block Grant presentations. Now, I want to apologize to Allison because she joined the committee after this funding happened last year and then went through our like super fast, crazy funding process this summer. And so this is going to be a little slowed down so that you can see the presentations before you score, and then the deliberations are actually an entirely separate meeting. So January 27th we'll meet as a committee and decide what those recommendations will be to fund those proposals. And then if necessary, we'll meet again February 10th. So I just wanted to point out that there will be 2 meetings in January to get kind of those funding deliberations squared away. Then from February
Uh-oh. Is anybody still there? It looks like we lost a couple folks. Somebody's
I'm still
internet
here.
must have.
I'm still
Okay.
here.
I'm here. I'm
Okay.
here.
So we will send out this schedule to you guys, and I think it makes sense at this point if you're able to pencil in that time, those additional meetings. It's really helpful sometimes to have that. Those meetings will be from 3 to 5 as well. So Rachel, sorry, we lost you, and it looked like Cindy as well for a little while. So I just was following up that we'll send this out to folks.
It was sent out with the
Oh, good. Okay, so
information
you
I
have
sent
it.
out.
Yeah, we have it.
Thank you. Thanks for that reminder, guys.
So Lynn and Rachel, just so I'm clear, you're suggesting that we potentially could or should go to all of these dates.
Yeah, so just block out your calendar if you can with all of these dates. We may not need them all. It sort of depends, but gosh, we've had some phenomenal applicants and some really good discussions over the past couple of years. And so, you know, the need is great. We may want to take the time to continue discussing everything to the conclusion. So if you can block them out for now, and then we will let you know if we ahead of time if we can cancel any of those.
Okay,
They're
but
the
like the
meeting
October
dates,
2nd
the December
date, that's
9th
not a meeting,
and,
right?
yeah, right. December 9th and January 13th are normal meeting dates.
Yeah.
And then January 27th is an added one, and February 10th would be a normal meeting date, if it's necessary, I think.
And then typically what happens is staff will present to City Council the recommendations, but we've been trying to give y'all opportunities. If you want to come and present to City Council, that's always an option. So if you want to block out the City Council meetings, that's great. You are welcome to, but that's a little more optional. So Rachel, sorry, I just was trying to give you time to come back online. It looks like you're back.
I just don't know if you can hear me because the Bend broadband width is cutting in and out, as according to the computer.
Yeah.
I hear you right now.
Okay. So yeah, again, that only additional meeting will be in January. The rest of the meetings are scheduled when we regularly meet or when council meets, because in the end, the annual action plan that is drafted is presented to council for final approval. Is everyone still there?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone have questions about the schedule? I think some of them have already been asked and answered.
Yeah, thanks for having that ready for us so us type A people can put that in our calendar right away.
Yep.
So Cindy, before we go, and I just want to have something to say after Lynn is done before we leave regarding possibly writing a letter to the city council. So just.
I did have something else to update you all on.
Yes.
We have a couple of things. Yeah.
Yep. I'm trying to share. If you hadn't heard, Deschutes County has surplus property that they're auctioning on October 16th. So share that with our partners. I kind of wanted to just announce it today to the partners that have called in. There is surplus land to be had in Deschutes County. You can go to Deschutes County's website and just Google that Surplus Property Act public auction to find the information. You have to kind of fill out everything online and then put your bids in, and hopefully, you know, some Deschutes County property becomes affordable housing in the future.
Yes, and just make sure to do research on the lots, because sometimes in the past they're not buildable or there's not water or services available, but just do a little extra homework. This comes up. So thanks for announcing that, Rachel.
So 2 other items before we wrap. Okay, the first is that you all had asked for an update from Pacific Crest Affordable Housing on their Quaint Hollow project. John's he was unable to come this time, and of course we canceled the August meeting, so he'll come and address you in October. They've decided that they cannot proceed with that parcel. So we will be putting that parcel back out through RFP for bids, more or less. However, we're going to do it a little differently this time and do some of that work ahead of time, so that hopefully folks know exactly what they're getting into. We will also require a pre-app meeting before submitting a proposal for this. So we need everybody to know exactly where the easements are, exactly what's expected of this property, who the players are, and what the workload's going to be, frankly, for anyone who will take it on. I still think there's some potential with this, though we did discover a couple more sort of roadblock potential once we started doing a little more research on this one. So you guys will hear from John next month. I think he really felt like it was important to come in and let you know why they didn't feel like they could proceed with this. And a part of that, just so you know, is because they've been rocking and rolling in some of their other projects as well. So that's good news as well. And then finally, next month, you guys, some of you may have been around long enough to remember the House Bill 4006 meeting that we had 2 years ago. This bill was passed, say, in 2017 by the legislature, and it is required for cities who have a certain threshold of renters that are severely rent burdened. So rent burden, you all may know, is when anyone pays more than 30% of their gross income towards housing. Severe rent burden is when they pay more than 50% of their gross income towards housing each month. So right now in City of Bend, 26% of our renters are severely rent burdened, paying more than 50% of their income towards housing. So because we are in that category, we are required to have a public meeting to talk about the causes and potential solutions to that problem. So 2 years ago, which was the last year we were in this category, we had a 4006 meeting in council chambers. It was packed. I think we had over 100 attendees. About 7 of them testified with various things. This year, we thought we might take a slightly different angle. The goal here is to have a productive meeting. And we have invited the Fair Housing Council of Oregon to come and do their annual presentation to talk a little bit about equity and the effect that equity has or has not had on housing over time. Part of this, frankly, I'll be completely honest with you, is although council meetings have been long and challenging at times recently, there's also an entirely new audience showing up and testifying. And to me, as a public servant, that is really exciting. And I want to capture some of that momentum and hopefully help create a few more advocates out there for the housing work that you all are doing. So that's part of the Fair Housing Council deal. We'll have a quick presentation. We've already invited the Neighborhood Leadership Association. We've been trying to line them up with this training for a long time, and then COVID hit and it just became almost impossible. In addition, Louise, who many of you know, is retiring in October. And so this will be our last presentation from her. I think she's wonderful and has so much knowledge. And so we felt like we needed to capitalize on this opportunity. We're also going to invite BDAB and the Planning Commission to attend if they're interested. And of course, anyone can live stream it on YouTube and just watch from a distance or call into either WebEx or Zoom. We're not sure yet for next meeting to participate in the discussion as well. So I look forward to having a lot of folks participating and hopefully some robust discussion about housing and equity in Bend and in Oregon generally, and really hope that you all can make it to our next regular meeting. So it should be a big one. I think that that's it for staff report. So I'll hand it back over to you, Cindy.
Great. I was trying to take notes, and I'll probably have to call you later to get clarification. So thank you so much. I think I'll just jump to Kathy. You mentioned you wanted to speak to something before we adjourn the meeting. So Kathy, you have the screen.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to point out that the work session that the City Council is doing is on the 16th, which is a week from today. And so if we had a consensus in this group to support recommending putting micro units back into the RS zone for the issue primarily of equity, that it would be good for you to work with Lynn on a letter between now and then. So I wanted to get a sense of if there was support on our committee to do that. And if there is a request that you pen a letter in support. So
I certainly would support that.
Any thumbs up? Okay.
yeah.
Okay, well then.
Yeah, thumbs up.
Okay. Lynn and I will get together and put something in writing. So we'll both be typing quite a bit here pretty soon. So thank you for that, Kathy, for letting me know the time is going by so fast. Did you have something?
Sorry, Kathy, I'm wondering, just reflecting on the objections that you shared from the Neighborhood Leadership Alliance, is there an opportunity for additional presentations and education about micro units and maybe to dispel some myths, or has that already been done?
No, it hasn't. And I know that the NLA has been requesting that they get more, or the ability to share information more with their constituency. There was a presentation that they could view at the last meeting and also at the work session. But exactly, there's been a change in the leadership. Two of the people who've been on the NLA, I think, are rotating off, and there's a new group. And so that may be a part of the problem, that they haven't been involved in the workshops that Ian and I have been sitting on in the stakeholders group. So the people who were in that stakeholders group are no longer a part of the NLA. So that may be a part of the problem.
Okay.
You know, they could use more information, but I'm not sure we would change anyone's minds. I think that there's just a lot of fear factor there, that, you know, just because you can do something doesn't mean it's going to happen or be financed. And that's a tough one for people to understand. So,
right.
Yeah, that's all I can say on that.
Anyone else? Well, Heather, welcome aboard. We're happy to have you. Allison, you're going to love the next process. It won't be so rushed. And Juan, thank you for your help today with the meeting. And Lynn and Rachel, always, your information is always so dialed. This is one of the best committees, and I just want to thank everyone. And meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.